Good evening, everyone. I don't want to break up the conversation, but I also know that, we're on somewhat of a time schedule. You guys are away from your families and everything like that, and we definitely appreciate that. So certainly welcome. I also thought about this morning and want to apologize first and foremost. I know it's dry January, and here we are throwing this event and saying, hey man, we got free drinks all in one. So apologize about that. We did talk about damp January. If you don't know what that is, that's only just drinking on Friday and Saturday. So I don't know if you have the gumption to hold to it, good for you. If you don't, maybe try damp January, whatever. But anyways, again, thank you for coming. First, I just figured we'd go around the room. We'll maybe start at that table, just name and who you're with. That way, just everybody kind of gets a feel for who's in the room.
I'm Jessica Lurga with the Community Foundation of the New River Valley.
I'm Laura Beth Weaver with the Women's Resource Center of the New River Valley.
Patrick Martin with Connectwise.
Ronnie Reynolds with the Community Health Center of the New River Valley.
I'm John Weatherspoon. I'm with All Residences.
Kevin DePietro with Taylor Hollow Construction and Active Panel.
Michael Quinones, this is my wife Claire with Blacksburg Pharmacy, Christian Church.
Oh, Celeste Parker, New River Community.
George Rhodes, New River Community.
Stephen Giat, Dexter.
Ian Hayes, Olicron. Graham Reynolds, Olicron.
Justin Moore with Green Valley Builders.
Ed Tuckler, Shelter Alternatives.
John Stevens, Private Street Builders.
John Harris with Midway Production Services.
Todd Walters, Valley Landscape.
I'm Hanson Ball, and I'm with Big River Community.
Well, thank you again, and we'll get to these folks here in a second. But again, thank you guys for your time. We really appreciate it. We know oftentimes talking, whether it's IT related, insurance related, it's probably not the most fun thing to discuss, but we promise to hopefully keep you engaged and make it a little bit more fun, and hopefully you'll all at least walk away learning something as far as that's concerned. So as far as just cyber, we're talking about cyber liability, and that term in general, you probably hear about it often, whether it's online, in the news, etc. You hear about it every day. You see it probably every day, whether you know it or not. But how can it affect us? And that's what we're really going to discuss today. But before we dive into that, we'll do the brief introductions as far as we're concerned. I'm Jeff Nosenzo. I'm with Brown Insurance. For those that don't know, Brown Insurance is just a small independent agency, literally right down the road there. Got roughly 9 people there, been in business since 1927. I'm the vice president there. I mainly deal with businesses in the community, River Valley and beyond. I also do personal insurance. And I do love long walks on the beach as the wind blows through my hair. It's a big thing of mine. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll let these fine folks introduce themselves, starting with Natalie.
Well, I didn't know we were doing our fun bios. I have a fun bio too. Well, I'm kind of at a disadvantage here now. So I am technical. I began my career as a software developer. I worked for the Department of Defense and did some interesting things in the supply chain, working in Intel Ops Center. I'm only admitting to 25 years of experience in IT and cybersecurity. And I used to work for Perch, which is now the Connectwise SIM, and they acquired me about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something like that. And I teach some sales courses at Connectwise and lead some cyber peer groups for Connectwise. And I come around and I talk with our partners, because New River is our partner, and we work together to help shore up your cyber defenses. And I'm a huge DC Comics fan, so I prefer DC over Marvel. I'm also a Lego nerd. I have a lot of Star Wars Lego. And I love my family and their intelligence and Lego, and I have 4 grandbabies, so I'm going to go see right after this event. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, my name is Jessica Swann, so I work on the thrilling and exciting insurance side of this gig. I know everybody loves to talk about insurance. You do. I know. Jeff loves insurance. But I work with Risk Placement Services, so we are a national wholesale broker. And basically where we fit into this puzzle piece here is we work with Jeff and his team as our partner and go back and forth with the actual carriers who are writing the policies that write your insurance. So we get to see cyber day in, day out, insurance policies, claims, the whole 9 yards. It's very thrilling. It changes every single day. There's never a dull moment. So it does get very lively. I've been with the company for about 4 years now. I graduated from a local university on the eastern shore of Maryland. I still live there with my husband. We live on a farm together. We just had our first child in March, so Dad is on his own this next couple of nights. We'll see how that goes.
So is Mama.
So is Mama, right? You're in, it's not dry January.
That's right.
So yes, that's just a little bit about us, but we're thrilled to be here.
Awesome. And with people here, I'm Jeff Wynn, New River Computing. We've been doing this for a super long time, not since 1927. It feels like that sometimes. And we're big in the Microsoft 365 space. We're big into securing our clients. I enjoy traveling, camping with my wife Lisa. I enjoy our kids too. Well, one's out of the house. But the truth is I really have no work-life boundaries whatsoever. It's just the same thing. So that's me.
No doubt.
Real quickly though, Connectwise, does anybody besides Pat out there know what Connectwise is? Can you tell us just a little bit more about what this thing is?
Yes. So we are a cybersecurity and software services vendor. So we provide different technologies. The part that Pat and I are from all has to do with cybersecurity, like endpoint detection, log management, like a SIM. Many of you may not know what a SIM is. It's kind of a newish for small and medium businesses to have a SIM. Multi-factor authentication, different types of security type tools. And we partner a lot with little up-and-coming vendors. We have like an innovation center, which I don't know the exact name of it, but do you know what I'm talking about? Our innovation program, like where we bring in some of the smaller, like Evo, which is a new vendor that's helping with like privileged access management and identity access management type of things, and Exium, SASE. We might hear about Zero Trust or SASE today, depending on how the time goes. We partner with a lot of vendors that do up-and-coming technologies, because Zero Trust is really not a technology, but it's a methodology for securing your space. It's something that's been done in the enterprise for a long time that's coming down to the small and medium-sized business market, and SASE as well. And we can talk offline about that, or if we get to it, we'll talk a little bit more about those technologies, because just like insurance is exciting and things are always changing, cyber is very exciting. There's new things happening every single day.
For sure.
Does that answer? Okay.
For those of you that work with us, you've probably seen your tickets and our invoices and stuff like that.
Yeah, that comes out of, that does.
Same
Yeah.
software.
It allows companies like New River to manage your infrastructure.
And if you don't know what some of those words are that she was saying or anything like that, don't worry, you're not alone. We are going to cover some of those today.
Yeah, I can take the whole hour.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, that's good. So now that we know them, we're going to actually find out what they know. And I just figured, just for the purposes of our conversation, we're going to start off pretty easily with Jeff and just cyber. Let's talk about it. We just heard the word probably 20 times. We're going to play a drinking game every time you hear it. But what is cyber?
In my mind, cyber is anything to have to do with IT infrastructure, computers, cloud computing, networking, anything that's communicating in ones and zeros. And that's cyber, and it's a oft overused term in my mind, I think, to some extent. But everybody kind of knows what it is without really knowing what the definition of cyber is.
That's fair. Probably like a word that covers a lot of things, but
Sure
just
does.
used just to use it. Okay, fair enough. So now that we know what cyber is, we'll jump right into just some fun things that really get the juices flowing, maybe. Let's talk about some cyber claims. Like so Jessica, maybe you can help us with that. Like what would a cyber claim look like? What would one be?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know this is probably what everybody is wondering. You read about it in the news. Just curious, has anybody, show of hands in the room, had a friend, a neighbor, anybody that's had a cyber event happen?
Nope.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. It is. It's very prevalent. And when we talk about a cyber exposure, everybody's got one. If you've got your networks and your systems, you've got a cyber liability exposure. And the claims that we see day in and day out are very scary, but the policies that we put in place are very rewarding to see how they work through and save a lot of our clients. So everybody's probably heard about ransomware. That's a pretty known claim. I'm glad to see nodding heads here. But that has been historically the leading cause of claims in the cyber liability industry. And we hear about it on the news. All of a sudden, you go into work, you go to log in, you can't access anything, and you've got a demand for Bitcoin, or maybe it's like a $450,000 payment that the bad actor is requesting you to send over, because they have your files, they're holding them hostage, and you cannot do anything until you are back up and running. And really, the policies are in place because they have experts who do this day in and day out to work through these events. So there's a lot of upfront that happens with our PR and notification calls. There's a lot of forensics that start immediately from hour one to get on board and try and mitigate this and stop this in its tracks. And from there, it can go a bunch of different ways. Sometimes the ransoms are paid, sometimes we find a way to restore backups. That's why I know we're going to talk about backups later and how important they are. But really, that's kind of what we've been seeing for the ransomware claims over the past year. I will say the other element here to leading claims this past year in small to middle-sized enterprise business, and at RPS, we're classifying those as under $100 million in revenue. It's going to be fraudulent transfer, these wires that are going out and being tricked out of your funds. I know everybody wants to say, we're safe, we're secure, but we see it all the time where social engineering is the term that you would look for in a cyber policy. And that is when you, as the client, are willfully releasing your funds to the bad actors. And we see it. We work at ungodly fast speeds. We're going 100 miles a minute here. We click on something or we approve something to be wired, and there you go. We just wired away $50,000, $200,000. We had an insured that we were just made aware of in December, where the CFO was talking on the phone with a bad actor for 2 hours. And he transferred over $400,000 to this bad actor. And it makes you sit here and wonder, I don't know if he still has his job, because that's pretty intense, that's a lot of money. But you just sit here and think it's not gonna happen to us, it's not gonna happen to our team, and then, we see it happen on a regular. So it's scary stuff, and we have resources available to help with all of that, but the claims we see day in and day out, and they're across all industries. We can touch on a couple of high hazard industries that we've noticed. We hear about healthcare and medical because obviously these industries hold a lot of what we call PHI, which is personal health information. So all of our medical records, so they're very susceptible to being targeted for attacks. But we also have, the municipalities, any sort of school system, community colleges are a really high target for ransomware events. But also in the past year, what we've noticed is that manufacturers, contractors, and nonprofits have taken up almost half of our claims in the small to middle business enterprises. And what we've noticed is that they're really, bad actors are really starting to cast their nets wider and try and grab at anybody who might have slightest deficiencies in their structure, in their setup, in their IT. So it's been an interesting merge, whereas before, our graphs and data would show municipalities, educational sectors, healthcare, retail exposures. Now we're seeing more of the manufacturers, the contractors, not-for-profits, definitely still in the medical space. Wholesalers and distributors are another good one. But it's been emerging, it's going to continue to emerge, and the claims are happening. You all just raised your hands. We all know somebody that's had an event. So the policy that we put in place is how we protect against that.
Which is interesting. You think about it too, like you hear about these big places that get hit targets and stuff like that, or you think, oh, it's just, that only happens in big cities. It wouldn't happen around here. I know plenty of people that have had some poor instances from a cyber standpoint, and it can be something as little as they changed an O in the email address to a 0. But how often, if you're talking with somebody regularly, do you actually read that? You just see in Outlook, you open it, oh, it's from Jeff Nosenzo. You open it, you're not looking at that email address once that thing opens. You're now in the subject, but you're not talking to me, you're talking to somebody else. And I know personally a guy that happened to, cost him $50,000. Just so happened there was a house closing, they had to actually wire some money, the guy got in there, and $50,000 gone. No insurance, nothing, he's just out 50. So it's crazy how that can happen.
That's a great point, because I wanted to ask the question, since the pandemic has hit as well, we've had a much higher increase in claims because of our new remote work environments. So just show of hands, does anybody have like a hybrid work environment now? Anybody able to work at home? Oh, wow. Yeah, and what I'll call us all is happy clickers. We are happy clickers. We get rolling, we're rolling fast. We get an email that has one letter off, we don't see it, it looks exactly the same, it sounds like it's legitimate. We hit send, we click on a link. So that is another reason where it's just human error.
Yeah, that happens for sure. Well, Natalie, so based on what we're hearing, I mean, what can we do? I mean, we just take it and go, or I mean, what can we do to help ourselves here?
Sure. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but there's some handouts on the table over there, and one of those handouts is the 15 ways that you can protect your organization against cyber attacks. As you can see on the screen right here, whenever we think of cyber, we think of the cyberspace, we think of the technical part, and that's correct. But there's a lot of it that has to do with people and processes as well. If people weren't happily clicking on everything, then we wouldn't need security awareness training. So security awareness training is one of the easiest, most cost-effective, and most powerful things that you can do. So teach your staff and yourselves and your families, it's not just at work, to slow down, read, look, who is that email from? Is someone trying to force me to do something really quickly? Because that's usually what happens in a phishing email. They're going to express urgency. You want to teach your staff and your family to look at stuff like that. And now not only do we have phishing, we have smishing, where you're getting those text messages all the time. We've been trying to reach you from Amazon.
I got one last night.
I know. Like she said, the social engineering. Social engineering, it's crazy. And you don't just have to worry about someone social engineering you. You have to worry about someone social engineering your bank, or your financial broker, or your spouse, or your kids. You have to worry about all of that because, and this is the reason also that security is a multi-layered defense. You can't rely on just one thing. You can't just rely on security awareness training. MFA would be another thing. You can't just rely on multi-factor authentication. Though I highly recommend that you use multi-factor authentication everywhere. Good passwords. Use a password manager. They're so user-friendly now. Like maybe not LastPass. I don't know. I don't know why I brought that up. Security assessment. So one of the things that we at Connectwise do is we partner with companies like New River, and we provide some tools that allow them to very quickly do a security assessment. Because security also is not one size fits all. Your business objectives, your risk tolerance is different. You may not care as much about work from home, because maybe it's your technical people who work from home and you really have to worry about them the most, because we're the worst clickety-clickers that there are, right? Right. But just for a silly example, when you do have, for instance, because of that, when you do have security awareness training, don't forget about your HR people or your sales people. It should be like everybody. Everybody should be secured with endpoint detection and response. So things like endpoint detection and response, or managed detection and response. And the only difference between that is having someone who has eyes on the system, who sees what's happening. So it's typically like software on your desktop, which will prevent you from installing software or removing software, or notify when there's potentially malware. It's leaps and bounds above antivirus. Because antivirus can only tell you about known knowns. based on definitions. Where an EDR can tell you about maybe user behavior. And then on top of that, you can deploy something like a SIM, a security information and event management system. This is going to take logs for things like your EDR and your firewalls and other things within your environment, aggregate those all together. And again, you're going to want to have someone have eyes on this. Whether it's through a dedicated SOC or it's through a partner like New River. And they have analysts, and Connectwise has analysts, and we know when we see something in those logs, when we alert off of them, if it's a real incident. And I'm sure from an insurance standpoint, you can back me up on this. You never want to use the word breach until you're there. That's a legal and insurance term. It's an incident until it's not. What else is on this list? Because I always forget. Web gateways, mobile device management. Mobile device management is very important. So for instance, somebody today sent me, oh, Jeff over here, you sent me your phone number so I can reach out to you in email. You know that I can't copy and paste your phone number out of my email into my phone so that I can call you. I have to remember all of those digits and type them back into my phone. So I have segregation between my work stuff and my personal stuff. It keeps me from cutting and pasting and doing bad things, even inadvertently. Your staff isn't always trying to do bad things. It's just, we get busy and we do bad things, right? Or unwise things. Business continuity and disaster recovery, which includes things even beyond cyber. But it does include like your incident response plan. It does include your backups and how you do your backups. Because you want to make sure that if you are ransomed, that you can restore those backups. So things we want to practice is restoring our backups. We also want to practice our incident response plan.
And with that too, just to add, definitely, if you take something away, go make an incident response plan if you don't have one, because every time we see a claim, I'm telling you, they're gonna wait to hit until it's Friday and your IT contact is out of town. Exactly. So you really do. You want to have a written plan that somebody can pick up, and you want to test it. But somebody can pick that up if Joe, your IT contact is out in the Bahamas, and you're sitting here. I can't access my systems, and I need to move forward here. What do I do? And you're panicking. We see it. It's a panic state of mind. So. Yeah, please do test that and implement that.
So I got a question along those lines from your perspective. So you were talking that, sometimes you have to pay for a ransomware attack, and sometimes you can recover from backups. What's the ratio? Is it like 50-50, or what is that more or less?
I want to say that more often than not, the ransom is paid. And this goes really deep into the boonies of ransomware claims, but there is data where the FBI is tracking these groups, and sometimes they're able to tell and associate them, and they say we cannot pay these. We legally cannot, and so from there, your insurance policy and all of their vendors are there to bring you back to where you were before. And so yes, you might be rebuilding or restoring if you don't have backups, rebuilding what you had lost, those construction plans that you no longer can access, all those medical records and files. But we do see it both ways. We interestingly enough had a school last year who had a $650,000 ransom demand. It was in Pennsylvania. And they said, no, we're not going to pay because we've tested our backups. We have fantastic backups. We've got 3 copies of them, and they pulled back and did not pay. And they had, I think, $60,000 in just costs that were covered under their policy from there that were not related, but they did not pay the ransom. They said, no, we are not caving. We have done our part. And that was a beautiful story. We love sharing that, especially when just talking about how important backups are. We've seen it, but it does go both ways. I'd say more often than not, paying the ransom.
You ever pay the ransom when it's going to take too long to restore the backups?
Well, that's when the vendors kind of go in there and say, what's your business income loss going to be? That's a huge piece we haven't really touched on yet. But when we're talking about you being down, your employees cannot work. You are losing income every hour that you're sitting there unable to operate. And so that's when the cyber policies have special analysts who come in and say, you know, it's gonna be worth it for us to just go ahead and pay by the time we have to restore everything. You know, this school in Pennsylvania was able to say, no, we've got them right here now, and they would back up in a day. So it definitely does depend on the case, but the business income loss is a new element that I believe is the reason why we're seeing some of these other industries being targeted. You know, we were talking about manufacturers being one of them, and the reason that they're targeted is because they're what we call happy payers. I mean, a bad actor is gonna look at a manufacturer and say, I cut you off all of your IT on the floor, which is where you're making all of your income from, your products that you're manufacturing. It's gonna be down, and your business income loss is gonna increase so much faster than, say, another sector. So that's why bad actors are targeting manufacturers, because they know they're gonna pay quickly, because if not, their business income loss is gonna go through the roof very fast.
And so,
Yeah, sure. I know, I heard the term earlier, MFA, you know, I feel like I know what that is. It seems like maybe it's a simple thing. I know what LOL is. I think Justin probably called me an MFer before. I know what that is. But can you touch on just real quickly what MFA is?
Sure. So there's many ways you could do MFA. Some are better than others. It's when, say for instance, y'all probably familiar with Office 365, right? So you log into your Office 365, and then it says, hey, how else do you want me to make sure you are you? And it'll send you an SMS text, which I don't recommend, or you'll use an authenticator, or you'll use an actual hardware token that'll be like that second authorization. So just multi-factor authentication, more than one way to authenticate that you are who you say you are.
I feel like most credit card companies are doing that now too, so you're probably used to it. Does that seem really difficult to do? I don't know that it is.
who here has everything that they do, that they could MFA, get MFA? Anybody here? You got it?
I think we are now, right?
Okay.
Help me understand.
Yeah.
I have a question, help me understand why the text piece you're not recommending.
Because it can, it's more easily intercepted, it's more easily spoofed. So there was, people can actually SIM swap your phone. And if somebody SIM swaps your phone and you're able to.
SIM.
This is a different SIM.
Okay.
This is the SIM card. Or the SIM card.
Yeah, okay,
This is a SIM card,
I'm with you.
or there's software SIMs now apparently in cell phones as well now. But this is the little card in your cell phone that says what your number is, what your carrier is, and who that belongs to. And what'll happen is if you get SIM swapped, which usually happens by someone social engineering Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile or one of those carriers, and you have protected yourself only with that, now they have your one-time passcode. If I have a little hardware token here. On my phone, I have my software. It's called Authy. There's several of them. Authy, LastPass, Google Authenticator. Those will what's it called? Rotate through different codes at a certain interval. Even if I get SIM swapped, that thing is set. I have it set so it's going to ask me to re-authenticate with my Face ID or with my password, that I am who I say I am. So someone would be able to get that. And then what's even better is a hardware token. I have a little hardware token, it's a USB-C, that I can put into my computer and I can touch my fingerprint to it, and that will also authenticate me.
Do you have one of those for each access point? I mean, so like for each system that you work in, so can you use one for several systems?
For several
So,
systems. Everything won't use a hardware token, so for those that don't, using SMS is better than nothing. I do have some services I use that SMS is the only way they do it.
So if I was using a token with a system already, then that same token could then be used with everything that I'm using?
Not everything
Not
is
necessarily.
not everything is gonna be able to use that.
Yeah, I can't use my token there's some software that I use that will not use that token. It's not
It's
easy.
when it
it's
comes
not,
to these.
it's not an accepted, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. Like, I'm a nerd. I've had one of these YubiKeys I've had several different generations of them. And more, if you go to, Connectwise doesn't sell them. We haven't even discussed whether you sell hardware tokens or not. So I don't know if New River does. But if you go to their site, it'll tell you what types of things you can authenticate with that.
So if it's supported, you can use the one token across the board, but they have to support it.
But they have to support it, and it's not like back in the day when I started doing this, that maybe I had 2 things that I could use that for. You know, like my source code repo, because I was a software developer, I could use it for that, but not much else. Now there's a whole plethora of different things I can use that hardware token with.
It's a super big takeaway. You do MFA wherever you can. If you get Harvard, that's fine. Google Authenticator, Authy. I think I've got like 5 or 6 of them on my phone at this point.
Yeah.
But even with your Facebook and your Twitter,
Yes,
whatever the case may
definitely.
be, like the most mild outcome would be embarrassment.
Right.
The most mild outcome. It could get worse if somebody impersonating you on Facebook. My mom gets hacked regularly on Facebook.
Yeah.
Sending money. But so you please do this.
You should teach your kids to do this too. I mean, not that I'm gonna date myself. I mean, I remember when Facebook and, remember MySpace? MySpace. Facebook, I mean, that's why I have a lot of those social apps, is because our kids were teenagers when they came out, and I didn't want 3 teenage girls on these social apps doing God knows what. And my husband was like, that's your problem. So, you're technical, that's your problem. So,
I mean, to the extent there is a silver bullet, it's this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look, you can have a little key up there.
Yeah, we do the
Look at that.
I love it.
That's an RSA one.
It's funny, you say these tokens, I have a 7-year-old, so I keep thinking of these little Pokemon
It actually, my YubiKey looks almost exactly like that, except it's a little bit smaller.
Do you have it on you?
Yeah.
Sure. This little USB thing.
I'm not passing it around, but I'll show you.
Let me see that for a few.
No.
While she's grabbing that, what about you, Jeff? I mean, is there any other additional thoughts as far as what we can do? Are there any standards that are available for businesses?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question, Jeff.
See how tiny it is?
Oh, yeah, that's like.
So there's a ton of standards and compliance regimes out there. HIPAA, the new FTC safeguards rule for financial institutions, the DFARS clauses in defense contracts, referencing NIST 80171 with 110 controls or something like that. So there's this new group, or relatively new group out here called the Center for Internet Security, and there's 18 things. That's all, just 18 things. Certainly we can do 18 things. So I think this is a good standard for use in a generic business that will help keep them secure, these cybersecurity.
That's a great resource. They actually run the multi-state ISAC. I don't know if you're familiar, Information Sharing and Analysis Center. I worked with MS ISAC and the CIS, the Center for Internet Security, for a very long time. And they work in the secret and top secret space as well. They don't share all that down. But that guide, it may look overwhelming. And even 15 ways, which by the way, I don't think I got through all 15 of them, but that's okay. They're broken down into digestible steps. So just want to make sure when you look at something like that, or you look at 15 things to do, when I was a software developer, I had an old boss who would say, perfect is the enemy of done. And where that comes from, because I looked it up, because it's like, this came from somewhere. It comes from Voltaire. Perfect is the enemy of the good. Do something, start somewhere, start small. That's why you want a partner, a trusted consultant partner, who's going to be able to do that risk assessment with you and decide where you should start.
Here's one, inventory and control enterprise access. Know what you have. I think that there are plenty of small businesses out there who really don't even know what they have out there and what's touching their 365 subscriptions or whatnot.
And all the cyber frameworks start with that. Know what you have, whether it's NIST or CIS or stuff that's been published by Connectwise. I'm reading a book right now, which I think you'd really like. Some of you might like. It's a really short book. It's the cyber defense matrix. Sunil Yu, he comes from the financial industry. They all start with identify. Just take small steps. Don't try to, do all 18 steps or all 15 steps. Just start somewhere.
What about, let's say, so we're hearing these steps. What about if you have, we'll start with an incident, right? We're not going to call it a breach first.
Right. No, we're not.
What if you have an incident? And I'll leave this to any of you. What should be the first thing, Jeff or Jessica? You have an incident. First step.
Call my lawyer.
Grab your printed, not your saved on the network that just got compromised, your printed incident response plan and start following it.
And the first thing that should be on that plan, I would say, is call your insurance provider, because I'm telling you, I hear it all the time. Nobody wants to report their insurance claims. We think of like an auto claim. Nobody wants to report it because their premium's going to go up. And this is completely different. And underwriters will tell us this all the time. You have to start from the beginning. They have the resources in place to jump in from the start, and time is of the essence.
So this is one of those places where I'm going to disagree a little bit with the incident response plan. And that is, I got some sage advice from an attorney from Roanoke who specializes in cyber law. And if you contact your attorney first, there's a whole bunch of privilege that can go on. In some communications and actions taken to be protected by that privilege. So the second thing would be the incident response plan.
Well, the first line in your incident response plan is call your attorney.
Oh, my attorney.
I think that's fair. As far as that stuff's concerned too, just what would be some things that would keep insurance from maybe not paying it? I guess assuming you have cyber insurance.
Assuming, and just so I know, show of hands, does anybody have a cyber liability policy? Excellent. This is exciting. Yes, that's awesome. No, I would say cyber is an intense underwriting process, and we understand that. There's a lot of questions that go into this, and what we've seen, and you've probably read about this in the news, is there's a very well-known carrier that for the first time sued their client for misrepresentation on an MFA attestation. And I know by the end of this, everybody's probably going to be tired of hearing about MFA, but we repeat it because it's so important. And misrepresenting that on their attestation caused them to have no coverage at all. The policy, the suit actually, they just came to terms with completely voiding the policy. They're taking it back. No coverage was provided. What had happened was, years past, they didn't have MFA. This carrier said they needed to have MFA in place in order to secure terms of their renewal. They signed the attestation saying that they had MFA in place for not just one thing. There are multiple things that they needed to have MFA in place for. And when a claim came in 3 months later, the forensics deemed that they did not have MFA in place. And I think that also partly comes back to who's looking at your applications. Make sure that the correct people are filling out those questions. These applications and supplementals that we're asking you to complete need to be reviewed, and if you have any questions, they need to be in the hands of the person who knows the correct answers. And if you don't know the answer, always come to your insurance agent, who's going to in turn partner with us or the carrier to get responses on how to answer those accordingly, because when you're signing these documents, it really is important, and that's where we're seeing coverage denied.
So you're not supposed to just guess?
Correct.
Okay.
Do not guess.
And the questions are getting a lot deeper than they were 2 years ago.
It's intense.
And so you almost need to get somebody like us involved too. It's like, well, are we doing this?
Please do, yes.
And, I'll be happy to talk to anybody at any time about that stuff.
I get 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
9 o'clock. It's an appointment, we got it. But it's getting much more complicated, requiring many more things, probably spending more money in some instances. And why is it getting so complicated?
It's awful. I mean,
I know.
Answer.
I know. It's because back in the good old days, you had to be super smart to be a hacker. You had to wear a hoodie, you had to sit in your mom's basement and play video games all day. But today, ransomware is available as a service. And when I say ransomware as a service, I mean, I have Bitcoin, I want to do something bad, I just go to the dark web and I buy myself some services. And those services include software, they include cool little educational videos on how to configure this software, they can include a help desk, they include someone to pay and process my payments, and all I need is some Bitcoin, or
It's like your Prime account,
Monero,
right?
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can use
It's
it
like
for
Prime,
service.
it's Prime for bad guys, or MSPs for bad guys.
I've heard great things about the bad actors help desks. That's really no joke.
No, for real.
They want your money, and so they're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
help you navigate how to give them some.
I'm not I mean, I'm saying it kind of tongue in cheek, but I'm not joking. I am not at all joking. As a matter of fact, would this be a good time for me to show that one slide on Evil Proxy?
Yes, it would be.
So this is a phishing as a service campaign. This slide builds, so I'll tell you when to click when you get to it. Okay, so this is the way this works. So this is how a bad actor this is why we need a multi-layered defense, and how a bad actor can defeat MFA. Sorry, insurance person.
No, you're right.
So my end user's there. Now there's a phishing website here, office with a bunch of F's, right? Okay, go ahead and build it again. Okay, so my user is busy, and clicks on a suspicious email. And they don't notice that in the email, it's going through Office with a bunch of F's in it. And they go, uh-oh, I may have done something bad. But then they end up at the right website. They're at portal.office.com, right? Because if you don't know does everyone know what a proxy is?
The proxy vote is.
A proxy takes, so in this case, it's like a proxy vote. It takes the information and it passes a service in the middle, man in the middle attack is what's called, a person in the middle attack. Yeah, a guy in the middle attack. It takes, right, it sends the request, it receives the request, and then it passes it back on to the place where you're expecting it to go. So, go ahead and click again.
Sounds fair.
Yeah, so the user goes, oh, I'm at the right site, so I'm gonna put in my username and password, but it passes through the proxy, so now Mr. Bad Guy has my username and password, it forwards it to the right site, and one of two things will happen. Either there'll be some obscure error, and I'll be like, oh, I must have done something wrong, or maybe there's a glitch in the network, or you actually get in, and you're prompted. Now you're prompted for your MFA code, so click again. And what happens? That goes through the bad guy's proxy. Now, click again. This bad guy has, I think there's one more click. This bad guy now has that session cookie. You know what that session cookie includes? It includes whether it's encoded or not, it doesn't even matter. Now they have it all packaged nice and neatly. They have a little package which includes your username, your password, and your MFA token. And now you're breached, and now they're gonna ransom you.
And that's why MFA isn't perfect, as good as it
No,
is.
but that's why it's multi-layered, so you need MFA. And all these cyber insurance, not only are cyber insurance, because I've seen some of these, not only are they asking for MFA, they're also asking for endpoint detection and response.
That's another one, yeah.
And another thing that you can do to prevent this is make your applications location aware. It's called different things in different applications. I forget what it's called in Office. So you can set it so that it knows.
Geofencing.
Yes, geofencing. So it knows that, so this bad guy, for instance, is in Russia maybe. And, I mean, just for instance. And now he tries to use that session cookie, because the bad guy's always a guy, right? Back me up this. And
Billie Eilish voice, because
yeah, you're right. There you go. Yeah. But when Office sees that that correct session cookie is coming from Russia, it stops it. So I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this to let you know it's a multi-layered defense based on your business objectives, based on your risk tolerance, and based on working for a professional who understands the space and can help you make those decisions.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned it's not just MFA, because everything that they just mentioned, you're gonna see on an application if you're
Yes.
filling it out. And really, all of those are things that are meant to not only protect you and your security systems, but also to have the underwriter say, I want to write this policy. I mean, they really do. And I mean, I know as a broker, we always work with our retail partners to say, hey, we're lacking these couple of areas, things like the incident response plan, phishing testing, employee training, things that aren't necessarily too crazy to implement that you should be able to check yes to,
Or
just
very
because
cost effective,
exactly
not expensive.
Exactly, and from an underwriting perspective, a carrier does want to see that you're taking those steps that don't take a lot of effort, that are really going to help make your cybersecurity whole.
Right. And I love that cyber training, security awareness training. I think it's so important just to have that stuff second nature, using that SLAM method for email. I think we got a graphic on that.
That's great.
That's the other thing I'd like to take everybody to take away is just, it's pretty easy. The sender, does it make sense? Is it Jeff Nosenzo with a 0 at the end? Or links, is it going to Microsoft.com? Or is it Microsoft with a one, for the L? Attachments, I mean, are you expecting an attachment for this individual? Does it seem right? Is the message right? Is it something that Jeff would write? Is it signed with his usual signature? So just using that simple SLAM method on every email that you get coming in will keep those weak moments from happening. 5 a.m., sitting on the computer, drinking a cup of coffee, looking through your email. It's super easy to do. A weak moment, any of us can do that. But if we're having all these security awareness things like the SLAM method top of mind, less likely we are to make a mistake.
That's pretty cool. And a lot of the stuff I'm hearing, honestly, is there's a lot of little things that are also easy and also cost effective that we can do. And if we're doing a lot of these things, one, you're going to be better off regardless of what you do from here on out. You're better protecting yourself. And if you don't do those things, they're so simple to do. Why wouldn't you do some of these things? Even if you can't do all of them, can you do some of them? I mean, some's better than nothing.
Percentage is the enemy of the good.
Yeah, exactly. So, as we're kind of winding down, I'm just curious, as far as, hey, we're Happy New Year 2023. What are we going to see in the future? What do we think is going to happen in the coming year or years? And that's really a question for all of you. What do you guys think?
Well, ransoms are, while the actual number of ransoms happening has actually decreased over the last year, the cost of ransoms has exponentially risen. We expect that to continue to be a trend. We've seen some bad actors retire and then come back. There was a really recent bad actor that has just come back, has researched some malware that's really old, because I guess they're thinking, well, people have forgotten about me, so let me come back. I can't remember what the name of that group. It's Russian. It's the Turlock. It's Russia again. Can you believe that? We think the supply chain or your third-party risk management program is really important. A lot of right after user failure or error or even malicious user stuff would be third parties causing breaches. I mean, I can think of Target. It was a while ago. One of Connectwise's competitors, who I won't mention, that may have happened on a July 4th weekend. So some people that I know. Solar winds, which affected the government. Lots of attacks come, so you really need to know what's in your supply chain and what your third-party vendors are doing, including if any of you have like industrial control systems, because those usually run, older software. We see, Zero Trust and SASE. So Zero Trust is really, I do have a slide on that. That's all about least privilege. I don't know where, Nick, one more. Nope, one more. Nope, one more. one more. I'll go to the next one because I know we're running out of time. So Zero Trust, no matter what any vendor tells you, is not a technology, it's a methodology. I believe this one of them was coined by Gartner. I think this is the one that was coined by Gartner, wasn't it? Oh no, this is Forrester. I always get it backwards. So everything's untrusted by default, least privilege access. Don't go, this is where you have to watch out for your IT people. Don't let your IT people surf on the server using their admin credentials. I never ever did anything like that. Comprehensive security monitoring, that means having things like endpoint detection and response on top of a firewall, and a SIM. A SIM which takes in logs and looks at everything so endpoint detection is more about your workstations, and SIM is more about what's happening on your network. And the reason you want to have both of those is there's two different points of view of what is happening in your environment. So it's things like that. SASE. So Zero Trust is kind of new to the small and medium business space, and so is SASE, that's Secure Access Service Edge. It's about, it does include Zero Trust. SASE is the one that was coined by Gartner. And that's about locking down your network services, cloud access security brokers, firewalls as a service, software as a service, because we're moving more and more in that direction. Everyone is.
In 2 years, you'll know what SASE is.
Oh yeah, you will. You will know. Yeah. So that's one of we have a new and upcoming partner, Exium, that we're working with at Connectwise that offers SASE. That's offering some, proof of concept stuff right now. But yeah, in a couple years, you will know what SASE is. Zero Trust is more than just a buzzword. Don't let the vendors scare you into or make you complacent by thinking it's just a buzzword. It's just about, it's really what it sounds like. It's about trusting nothing.
So it's not my wife after 2 martinis?
No. No. Okay, so I'll let somebody else talk.
Just to piggyback off of that from the insurance perspective, 2023, we're starting to see a slight bit of lifting in the market, which is fantastic. This is really fun stuff. We see a couple of carriers who are starting to really lower their rate increases. Maybe we're in the 15 to 20, 25% range, whereas, the last couple of years, 50% if you're in a high hazard industry, you've seen 100%, maybe 300% rate increases. But with that, it really comes down to your cyber hygiene. So you're still going to have underwriting scrutiny. We're still going to be asking the questions. We still want to see, think of this as your health checkup. We want to see that you have the controls in place. MFA is the minimum. I know we've said it a million times tonight, but there's many, many more controls that underwriters are going to expect you to have in place. But with that, I will say, if you're currently looking at MFA and you're working with everybody and it's in the pipeline, still please reach out about a cyber insurance policy. There still are, it's so specific, dependent upon the industry and the size of your business and other controls. We talked about this is other controls. You're still eligible for a policy. And one of the things in 2023 that's going to continue is we might see supplements. If your cyber hygiene is not where it should be yet, but you're working there, we're seeing carriers get creative. They're supplementing your ransomware coverages or maybe your first-party coverages. And as you're working with your IT folks to make your security better, they're increasing that as you kind of check things off the boxes. So it's not all at once. We understand it's a process. And then the last thing that I would say is our carriers are still leaning on vulnerability scans. It's something we haven't really touched on yet, but vulnerability scans are conducted by plenty of insurance carriers that we represent. And basically what they're doing is they're scanning your domain. They're not tapping into your network. A lot of times people say, oh my gosh, I didn't give them permission to go into my network and do the scan. They're really just looking to see what the bad actors are going to see. And a lot of times they come back with a report that you get to analyze with your IT team. And these are the deficiency areas. So that is going to be another avenue that is going to continue, and more are jumping on that bandwagon as well, because again, it's just another way to make you aware of what vulnerabilities might be in front of you.
And she brought it up, maybe, so vulnerability scan, is that the same thing as a penetration test?
So in my mind, it's not. It's two different things. Vulnerability scan is, we run these collective scans, right? So it's a piece of software that runs against your 365 tenancy on all the computers and reports back to us where there's problems. penetration test in my mind, and you please correct me if I'm mistaken here, please. Penetration test includes, in my mind, more of a social engineering attack. Can I walk in the front door and like get behind somebody's computer and start doing it? Can I put a USB stick in, right, to some computer and read some information? So the penetration test, I'm actually trying to break it. Whereas this, I'm just seeing where the deficiencies are.
Sure.
So that's my mind.
And what about for you for 2023? I mean, anything else that hasn't been mentioned?
So, a couple of things. You do vet your vendors. You know, those of you that are our clients, ask us what we're doing, you know, to keep our house clean and secure. Because you can imagine, you know, if we were breached, what does that mean? That means that all of the people that we serve could potentially be breached, right? So it's important to check your vendors. And Connectwise communicates what they're doing for trust. And so I think that's important for folks to do. I worry about the tools getting easier and easier to use for these hackers, where you just click and drag and drop things and magic happens and you can be on somebody's computer and steal that cookie, whatever the case may be. I worry about advanced persistent threat actors. These people can be on systems, and I don't know what you're thinking, 70 to 140 days or something like that, before you're even aware there's a problem. Right? In general, these are the more sophisticated actors, like state actors or something like that. But
maybe Russia.
You know, maybe Russia, might be. You know, a state that may permit that sort of thing to happen.
Could be China too. China.
So those are the kinds of things I'm worried about. I'm anticipating this year more and more folks are going to want that ongoing security awareness training because I think it's so important these days. So I think we are going to keep working our way towards that zero trust, the SASE sort of model.
We'll get there. And then in a couple of years, there'll be some
other new
because the threat landscape will
learned.
keep changing. Oh, you know what we talked about earlier, I forgot to mention, was the AI, the chat GPT AI being used to automatically create malware, to write code to create malware.
Is that what you were using to chatting with that?
Chat GPT?
Mm-hmm. Was it chat GPT? Yeah. Well, see, now with new line of business.
Oh, see? Oh, okay.
Where's my email now?
Where's your hoodie?
So those are the kinds of things I'm worried about. Super don't want anybody we serve or anybody in the River Valley or anybody to be breached, but it's going to happen. So it does seem wise to approach Jeff Nosenzo to cover your bases. Should we can throw the three-legged stool is up there. We can throw all the technology of the world at you, but still not protect you, because it's going to be about the people. It's going to be about what those people are doing. There it is, three-legged stool. You ain't got one of those things, and maybe we're not so secure anymore. So anyway, that's kind of what I think.
We don't really have much more. I mean, there might be some questions that you all have, or some things that were said, or some letters that you don't know what they are. If you have any questions, this is the time. We'll certainly open it up. So if there's anything that you guys are wondering about, please feel free to ask those now.
I only got one question so far from John.
I know. It was a good one, too. He's winning right now, for the record, if anybody's competitive out there.
So in the MFA, you can use a Google Authenticator. Are there like multiple different authenticators that you should all have them all on your phone? Does Google do all of them? How does that work?
Great question.
I have 3. That might be overkill. Maybe.
I probably have 5 right now.
Okay, I was feeling bad about 3.
Certain
You win.
vendors will want to use Authy, for example, or Duo. Duo's a great one. So I think it's unusual to have several. I really wish it could be one, but we're not there yet. I think we're moving closer, especially with these tokens. Great question. Who else?
If I use $ signs instead of S's, is password a reliable password? $ sign.
It's more reliable than password without the $ sign.
Okay, as long as you put a number in there too, you're golden.
You're fine.
Zero.
Password 1.
Bang.
Yeah.
Let's talk password hygiene, because that's a great thing to discuss.
What's yours?
His password went $2 signs.
I have an at sign. Lemonade.
So I love music, I love to play music, and I've always got songs running through my head, so I tend to take lyrics and mangle them and put in random characters like a dollar sign in there. So when it's one I have to remember that I can't put in my LastPass.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, there was an issue with LastPass
Yeah.
recently. Oh boy.
There might be a webinar coming up on it.
There
You
might
see
be.
me on it.
Yeah. If people are interested in seeing that, we can probably look at that. So, longer is always going to be better. It's going to be much more difficult to brute force. We don't want a ton of dictionary words you might,
No dictionary
inquire.
words.
I can't spell that.
If you have to remember, so that's why for me, I can remember a song lyric, maybe a piece of poetry or something like that, scrambled around a little bit, make it long. I don't know what the current rate of like brute force attack against random password, but you go from 8 to like 16.
That's why you need a password manager.
Before the heat death of the universe, they're not going to get it, right?
So current technology.
Yeah.
Current technology.
Yeah,
So
quantum computing.
thinking about LastPass, that's another vector that I thought we're going to be seeing this year. So LastPass is a password manager. They did get breached. The bad actor has all the encrypted password vaults. So if they want to attack those, they can. That would take a long time. What they do have is your name, your email address, the URLs that you visited, right? So that's going to make them a lot easier for a bad actor to spearfish you,
Yes.
John. Because I know you bank at NBB, so I'm going to try to fish you. I know what your email address is. I probably know your address, right? So it'd be a lot easier for me to target you with an email.
Yeah, I want to say something about that because we kind of talked about MySpace and Facebook. And did I say that right? Yeah, MySpace and Facebook and all that. Good. For a minute there, I thought I said it wrong because my father-in-law used to call it my face. And I'm like, you can't say that. I'm gonna get on my face. No, you're not. So, you know those little fun little games. How many states have you been to? How many things have you done? Please, for goodness sakes, don't do that. And another thing that I'm going to advise you to do, because I wear a tinfoil hat on most days, is when your bank or it's not my bank doesn't do it. Yes, lie.
Through your teeth.
You know
What's
what
your
I'm.
first pet's name?
What's your mother's
Lie.
maiden name? Lie and write it down because you know what happens is they can socially engineer that from your bank. Because there's all these layers of people that are so susceptible to social engineering. Lie and keep that information in your password vault as well.
So this password vault, is it a real thing?
Oh yeah. Yes.
That's got a
It's a
lot
piece of
to go
software. There's,
Yeah.
no, it's a real thing. LastPass is a password vault. It's a software vault. KeyPass is another one that hasn't been breached yet. There's other ones too. If you're looking for one.
Password vault.
Yes.
You're selling it really well.
Yeah. Well, this is just another example of it's not a matter of if you're going to get breached, it's when and how bad it's going to be.
But really, they're not likely to be breached again soon, right? Like they're
Right,
probably
that
most
you're in the
secure.
right after you've been breached, you're the most secure you can be. That sounds funny, but it really is true.
Right?
It is.
So, combine that LastPass breach with the recent Twitter having all of that user data exposed, I think there's going to be a lot more targeting of individuals.
Yeah, because there's data analysts that are bad guys too. They're everywhere.
Great question.
Yeah, for sure.
What else?
Is everybody
They're
scared
really
yet?
cheap too. A personal one, I think I paid $50 a year for LastPass.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. It's not very expensive.
So when Google I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. No.
When Google asked me if I wanted to save my password,
Absolutely not. Never save your passwords in your
Yes.
browser. Oh my god.
no, I don't. My husband does. I like mine.
My husband does too. That's why I keep all his stuff segregated from all my stuff.
So, and the other thing is the little checkbox, keep me logged in. That's not a good idea.
That's persisting your session cookie.
Yeah, so that
So
will
when your
could
bad
be-
guy through evil proxy gets your session cookie, you've just helped him out.
So,
But definitely let all the websites save your credit card information.
Yes, that's okay.
100%.
perfectly safe.
Yeah.
It's very easy, it's been proven, it's very easy to breach the browser security and gain your passwords.
Right, and that's why some of these people who do that vulnerability scanning love it when you save your passwords in Chrome.
Yeah, and don't use
Because
your work.
they're gonna show you what that password is on the vulnerability.
Yeah, don't
scanner.
use your work email to shop on Amazon or to shop or to add your Facebook.
Those are hysterical when they come back.
Yeah, don't. Because you're gonna show up in a dark web search.
You will. What else? You got anything else?
If we're backing up, if we're using Office 365, we're backing it up with a third party like Acronis or something like that, and we're also backing it up on, an in-house, drive or something like that. I mean, what's the risk there at that point? I mean, how are you going to lose your data?
It's gonna depend, RTO and RPO, recovery point objective and recovery time objective are two very important things. RTO is how quickly do you need to restore everything, and RPO is how much data are you comfortable losing. Depending on what kind of business you're in, you could be fine with maybe you're fine with losing a week of data. Maybe you can only lose 24 hours of data. And of course, the shorter that time and the shorter that recovery point objective, the more expensive it's gonna be.
For that specific use case though, Ian, from the 365 backups, I mean, I think that's nearly continuous. So your RPO is gonna be, 20 minutes ago, whatever that frequency is. It would be very different for a server or something like that. So it could be, 24 hours maybe is something you shoot for on a server. Did we answer a different question than you asked, or did we answer the right?
No, I guess I'm just, I guess what I'm asking is from your experience, like, have you seen that level of backup still be breached and fail and have total access, loss of access?
Do the backups get?
Yeah, I mean, is there a way to compromise all three of those, the original Office 365?
You should
the
have
bonus
some
backup?
offline.
Yeah, they need to be offline.
It's good to have it offline.
It's good to have it offline. Yeah, if your disks are always connected to your network with your backup, then yes, they could be wiped out too. And it does happen. There was a school in Iowa that was just a couple days ago. I don't even know if they've reopened yet. They got breached. I don't know if it's elementary, middle, high school. It's not Institute of Higher Education. And they had to completely shut down.
And so these bad actors, we were talking about those advanced persistent threats that are in your environment for at least maybe 70 days, 2 or 3, 4, 6 months. And they're going to corrupt those backups as you're born. So when they cryptolock you, you can't even go back and go back. Have you seen that?
My mind is going more to what we call privileged users and the access on the network. And so, just from, again, being the insurance person here, I know it's all fun. MFA, we talk about MFA. MFA is also supposed to be on your privileged user accounts, because what happens is the bad actors tap into your system. They move laterally throughout your network. They grab the privileged users' usernames, and then they have the keys to everything. Your backups, they can change your systems, everything. And so that's why, from an insurance standpoint, we always say, MFA for privileged users, even when they're inside your network. This is not off network, inside.
A privileged user, in other words, that'd be administrator.
Yes.
Right? The domain admin.
How do you back up data with some kind of air gap, on premise?
You back it up and then you move it. In the old days, we used tapes. Some industries still do.
Sure, but so you have to physically back it up like once a week or something.
Right, you have to physically back it up and physically remove it.
So, it's also vetting the vendor again, too. What
are their practices? Yeah.
Yeah, from a backup perspective, I worked in the backup space for almost a decade. A lot of times vendors would be local only, they weren't pushing off site, and those could be corrupted pretty easily, just based on the methodology that they use. Grandfather, father, son was a terminology that used to be pushed around a lot. It develops a chain of backups where it kind of lumps all the journals together. As Natalie was saying, I think Jeff even mentioned it, if they're in your system for weeks, months at a time, they can corrupt all those journals without you knowing, and if you try to restore it, that chain's broken, so you can't recover back to it. You have to reseed your data, is a very popular term. So getting your data off-site, not having that chain dependency within your backups is crucial as well. So yeah, on-site can be corrupted. The old tape backups, you can swap tapes every week. I mean, there's a place for it, but if you have a recovery time or an RPO of an hour ago, it's all a big conversation to have. So,
And I'm super glad that I haven't seen, do you rotate your tapes on any of those cyber insurance forms?
Not yet.
For like 4 years ago.
We're going back to the old days.
Are you really?
Now, I mean, again, any other questions now that we're all depressed and scared?
I actually have one.
Yeah.
What happens if you lose your hardware key for MFA?
You off yourself. No, seriously, no, I'm just kidding.
Now we're very depressed.
Seriously, I have backup. So my YubiKey is first, and if I were to lose that, I do have a backup YubiKey. And I also either use a authorization like Authy or Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator, whichever one. I actually have 4. I recounted after we had the conversation. But you still win with 5. So I have backup methods.
And presumably there's an administrator somehow that's managing that program at Connectwise. You could say, oh, Natalie has lost her phone, lost her 2 YubiKeys.
Yeah.
We need to get her back up
Yeah.
and
And
running
then
with a new YubiKey.
running or fired. One of the two.
That was a great question.
Natalie, with all of your protections, have you ever been compromised?
I've seen my email show up and on Have I Been Pwned? It's spelled PWND, isn't it? Or is there ED? I don't remember. I'm having a brain fart right now because I'm old. But not because of things I've done, but because of maybe a third-party breach like Target or the Office of Personnel Management, because I used to actually work for the government. So yeah, so it's you should pay attention. And a dark web scan will tell you that for your company. It'll tell you who in your company is using their business email address for Facebook and has been, or Twitter and has been breached.
That's always a fun conversation with Anson and Jeff.
Is it? Oh.
My friends tell me.
Oh yeah. So, yeah. Knock on wood, not because of anything I've done to this point, but I go to the extremes maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Like segregating my husband from the rest of the network. He's the weakest link.
And that's one of the things that I think that all the technical folks who we're have set up, when we're working from home, isolating that
Yes.
computer so that it can't see my TV and my refrigerator in the room.
I have a separate Apple ID for my work
Yeah.
stuff and my personal stuff. And if it was my choice, I'd have separate cell phones, to be honest with you, but I'm not buying a cell phone for Connectwise, though I love them. I'm not buying them a cell phone.
Any other questions?
I have I'd like an opinion on a business process that, we sort of, our systems on how we've done stuff in my business have grown from us being a very small company. So we were using calendaring, we use Google Calendar heavily. It's sort of the center point of our business process. We do events, it's event driven, things land on the calendar, we have a bunch of different calendars. If I was to lose that, I would be totally screwed. How susceptible is this something that I need to really be figuring out a better way to do? And what's your take on a cloud surface? Knock on wood, it's been years.
Is this like a professional, is this like the Google services, or is this just a Gmail?
No, this is just Google Calendar.
Oh.
It's the center point, our whole business essentially. We capture information.
So it's not
about
your
people.
own domain, it's just the
Correct.
Gmail?
Correct.
Okay, well, yeah, you need.
How much cash do you have?
Yeah.
Well, the interruption would be if someone locked us out of that.
Well,
We don't know what we have, what date was that event?
Yeah.
right, so the problem is, what we were talking about with Evil Proxy, with that's not location aware. It's not geo-fenced. If you had what do they call Google Docs?
Google for Business.
Yeah, Google for Business, then you could geofence it, but just a regular, that's a risk.
I'm super not aware of, we're 365 folks and don't really touch the Google stuff, but Google Business is a thing, and it's probably where you need to.
Yeah, it's where you
Well,
need to be.
the fact of the matter, and I've been working, this is the year where we go to an industry-specific software that will back end this, and in theory, we move away from using Google Calendar, but I mean, we've been doing this for 20 years, you know? I mean, but I get scared if someone really went in there, it would be hard to recover from.
That's a high risk practice.
It's not as if there's sensitive data on this.
Yeah,
It's the information we need to go
Right,
out.
to do business.
We
There's
know
no-
where we're gonna be on a day.
Right, there's no recovery time objective, recovery point objective, you're at Google's,
If you're not MFA, at least turn that piece on.
yeah.
Something back?
Yeah, so I want to talk about like a disgruntled employee. You know, like how fast should you do it before you let them go? Change their password, change your common shared passwords, just to ensure that they don't have access to anything that they can delete or.
You shouldn't have, number one, you should not have common shared passwords.
Absolutely true. But to your point, the way we like to have it play out is we're aware of when that termination is going to happen, and we can act on changing all those sensitive passwords and disabling accounts and disconnecting a phone from email right when that termination is going to happen or departure is going to happen. Even if it's an amicable departure too, right? Just to have it.
You should have a policy for that, policy and a process.
For sure.
Well, I know, go ahead.
I'm sorry, did we answer that question?
Yeah.
I know it's getting a little later and everything like that. We're definitely going to hang around, so feel free to certainly chat amongst yourselves, run out in the rain, have fun, or hang back here, eat some more food, have a beer, cocktail, water, soda, milk, whatever.
I'll let them see my YubiKey, but they can't
That's
touch
right.
it.
That's right. Yeah, you can see that. We're going to hang around. So again, really appreciate you guys coming. Hopefully we didn't put you to sleep. I didn't see too many heads nod, but really appreciate it. I know it's time away from family, friends, and everything. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Appreciate it.